Don't you hate pants?
Here's Brunette. Brunette's in. Andrew Brunette's going to score. Andrew Brunette in sudden death overtime. And Minnesota is moving on.
I won't need my high school diploma anymore. I am smart. I am smart. I am smart. I am smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-T.
Played here by Danny Heatley, and out they come 2-on-1. This is Niederreiter holding on to it, and he scores! Nino Niederreiter wins the series for the Minnesota Wild.
Welcome, Giles and Ben's podcast. Trying to rebuild our credibility that got lost in the previous week after PK Subban was traded after we violently said he would not be. So, thank you for sticking with us. I'm just kidding. Anyway, we're Skyping because far too lazy to go out in public today. I'm Giles, always joined by Ben on the other side of the computer.
Hello.
Ben, did you have a scouting report from Valley Fair
No?
yesterday?
Valley Fair.
You went somewhere yesterday.
I went to Uptown.
Uptown. I don't know why Valley Fair was in my head.
No, Updown.
Uptown.
Which is in Uptown, yes.
Oh, that's right.
That's the one. Yeah, I tweeted about it, which my faithful followers will see it. But it's in case you didn't know, it's up/down, and it's basically an adult arcade, and it's pretty cool. It's exactly what you would expect. It's almost exactly what I expected, which was kind of cool because, maybe you have high expectations, but just an insane tap beer list, which was really good. Tons and tons and tons of retro video games, which were really cool. And, some other games out on the patio, like Giant Connect 4 and Giant Jenga played with 2x4s. And, stuff like that. So, it was busy. It was insanely busy, actually. But they've only been open for 3 weeks, and it was an absolutely beautiful Saturday afternoon, so I really wasn't surprised or disappointed by that at all. Like, we kind of knew what we were getting into going there at that time. So, it was really awesome. I would highly recommend it if you're in the Uptown area, or even making it kind of a destination thing. Just maybe shoot for a time that might not be quite as busy, because there was definitely couldn't get at every game that you wanted to on a Saturday afternoon there.
That was a sweet plug for Uptown.
Yeah, well, I walked in, and they had Stone Cold versus Dude Love from, I forget which pay-per-view, but 1998. And you know what? I was hooked right there. So
Nice. I don't know anything you just said, but
that's okay.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, take my word for it.
No, you're right. Yesterday or Saturday was a nice night. Went to the United game with Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And as always, Dan was pleasant as we're sitting there trolling each other on Twitter. But, nope. Then I met up with some friends at a bar that must not be named in St. Paul, and was an enjoyable evening.
Sure.
Yeah, anyway, I suppose we can cut to the chase. I don't want people to get too attached to what we do socially.
Yeah. Or God forbid, like, seek us
those
out.
guys.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was kind of a busy week, I guess. There was a lot of nothing in the hockey world until Thursday, when in a span of an hour, we all got blown away by 3 mega deals.
Well, wasn't that Wednesday?
I thought it was Thursday. Maybe it was, I don't know. Days blend together.
I think it was Wednesday.
You might be right.
I think it was.
Anyway, which kind of led into free agency opening on Friday, in which the Wild were active, probably more in a good way, and that they didn't ridiculously overspend on a Lucic or Backus or Capozzo.
Yeah.
Instead, they signed. Their first signing was Eric Staal to a 3-year deal for $10.5 million. I guess what are your thoughts on that?
I don't want to get too excited about this signing because
Yes, calm down.
Yeah, he he did only have 39 points last season. And that was playing 83 games no less. And so I don't want to get too jacked up about it because he had a bad year last year. I mean, quite frankly, he didn't look good, and even though he was on a bad team for most of that season, I mean, he didn't really resurrect things so much when he joined the Rangers, which you can make arguments about them too, I guess. But I'm tempering my expectations, but just kind of on the surface, I like this deal a lot. I like it, in the fact that 3 years is maybe about the shortest term you're going to get with a free agent that's actually sought after. I mean, you can sign the Nate Prossers and the Ryan Carters of the world to 1 and 2 year contracts all you want. But seeing as how Staal actually had other hockey teams that wanted him to play for him, 3 years is probably the lowest that you were going to get for term. And then $3.5 million is, a relative bargain. I mean, it's just a shade over what Charlie Coyle is making, and that we know that's a bargain. And so I think Staal has the potential to basically outplay his contract, which is a very pleasant surprise for a free agent signing. I don't know that it's likely, and you certainly, it's probably more likely that he ends up being a 40-point, second-line center type for much of this deal, but, he was a 70-point scorer for much of his career, and he just started, he just declined a little bit in the last few seasons, registering 60 and 50 points in the 2 years before this season. So I don't know. I don't think it's unrealistic to expect a 50-ish point season out of him. And for $3.5 million, I don't think that's bad. Plus, adding the whole thing about acquiring a center, keeping Coyle and Granlund on the wings, I think is just absolutely great. So that's a win in and of itself, aside from who you got and how much you paid for that center. What do you think?
Well, you just kind of look at his stats and you see that he had 7 consecutive years, which ended with the lockout season, but he was definitely playing at this kind of pace.
Yeah.
7 straight years of at least 70 points.
Yeah.
But the negative was he was playing in Carolina, and they've been a hot mess for pretty much ever since they won the Stanley Cup.
Yep.
And really in the last couple of years, his game has kind of gone down. Most notably, last year only 39 total points, and he kind of mentioned that it just kind of wore on him that Carolina didn't spend to the cap, and they just didn't seem overly interested in winning and all that junk. So I'm kind of optimistic about this deal. The 3-year deal wasn't I wasn't overly big on the term, but
yeah,
seeing the salary he took, there was probably a concession there, and and then a limited trade clause. Doesn't bother me because he probably is just like, I don't want to go back to Carolina.
Yeah, and I think
don't send me there.
And I think that's got to be it. I mean, a lot of people kind of flipped crap about this limited no trade clause, and there was really zero reason to. I mean, it's just probably a list of 10 teams that he doesn't want to go to. Yeah. And it also doesn't mean that he needs to be protected in the expansion draft. Right. So, and not to mention, it's like, well, if you're upset about a limited no trade clause, do you think that the Wild are going to need to trade this guy in the next 3 years for some reason? And for what?
Right.
You know, if anything, maybe we trade him in the third year. If we're having a down year and he's having a good year, we get to trade him in the third year. Otherwise, he's on a pretty affordable deal. And I'm sure he, you know, depending on how, you know, what the situation is in that third year, maybe he waives the no trade clause. I don't know. But I saw several people blow up a little bit about this limited no trade clause. And it's just like, who cares? He's earned that right to ask for it, you know, with just giving what he's accomplished. And if you're Chuck Fletcher, I don't know how you have any problem giving it to him whatsoever.
Right.
Especially for that cap hit.
Usually these no trade clauses or limited no trade clauses are just, you know, don't send me to the 10 garbage teams in the league. Like,
please don't trade me below the Mason-Dixon line. Yeah.
Send me to, you know, somebody who's in contention.
Right. Exactly.
Very, very understandable.
Mm-hmm.
But, and then I guess just to toss out, like, what do we expect from Staal? Like, you kind of mentioned it, you know, maybe like a 50-point season or 40 points. I forget what you said.
I said it's not. I don't think it's unrealistic to expect him to be around that 50-point mark. Do I think he's going to score at least 50 points? No. That might be a little lofty. But at the same time, Boudreau had already said, I mean, Boudreau said when we signed him that he wasn't playing with guys like Zach Parise and Charlie Coyle. And that comes off of, you know, a lot of talk about Granlund and Koivu being paired together. And so it just kind of, by process of elimination, it kind of looks like, at least to start, and obviously these things change all the time, but Staal's going to get a fair shot to play between Parise and Coyle. And that's not bad. You could do much worse to center a line for the Wild than between those two guys. I mean,
that's quite the line that'll crash the net.
Right, and you know, Coyle and Staal have a fair amount of size. They can dig a lot of pucks out, and Parise, who doesn't have a fair amount of size, still digs a lot of pucks out. So I think that line kind of has the potential to be a little bit of a possession monster, and you know, they can hold the puck in the zone a little bit, and that, you know, is going to translate to some scoring, especially when you've got Parise and Coyle. I mean, even if Staal's skills have degraded a little bit, even if he's not the scorer that he once was, I think he's still plenty capable of playing a physical game and setting up some plays for Coyle and Parise, and it shouldn't be hard for him to rack up 40 points this season. And 50 is, you know, like I said, I don't know that I would bet on it, but I think it's a relatively achievable goal.
You kind of briefly hit it there with puck possession and just kind of looking at his numbers since that data has been collected.
Right.
On some pretty bad teams, he's had some pretty good puck possession numbers. And, you know, that just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Just not to incite any hot takes on that, but considering the Wild were very much a dump and chase team at the end of last year, which drove me up a tree. It's good to see them go get a guy like Staal who has pretty good stats in the Corsies,
yes,
if you will.
Yes, the Corswicks and such.
Yeah, and then, I don't know, this deal kind of came out of left field.
It really did.
They signed old pal Chris Stewart to a 2-year deal worth $2.3 million.
Mm-hmm.
So 1.15 annually cap hit.
Yep.
There was like a half hour where nobody really knew what the actual cap hit was.
Yeah.
So, like, it gave me kind of time to think about it, and seeing that it was, you know, a 1.15 cap hit per season. That's not a terrible deal for a guy who's probably going to play more in the bottom 6.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He could do a lot worse, and just kind of gathered Stewart liked his time here. He seemed to be well liked by the players for the most part, I think. I guess we'll leave that up to the almighty alternate captains. But,
Well, we know Dumba is a huge fan of his.
Oh, yeah.
And
They're-
that's that. I think that's not to be underrated because Dumba, I think as much as he's been around, he still has a lot to benefit from some mentorship. We kind of saw it with him and Leopold. We had a really good relationship, apparently, and even though some people were very quick to point out their stats together weren't amazing, but he's still got a lot to learn as far as being an NHL player. And obviously, Chris Stewart isn't going to teach him anything about playing defense, especially as a defenseman. It's still not a bad thing to have a guy, somebody like that he can be close to, and somebody like that he can use as a resource. Somebody who's played, 8 seasons in the league already. Somebody besides Jonas Brodin, who he, even though they seem to have a great relationship, they probably don't have a ton in common as far as language and upbringing and that sort of thing. So, I think it's a good thing, and not just from that standpoint. I think that Stewart can be a good bottom six contributor. He can be a guy that kind of goes back and forth between your third and fourth line, much the way that Justin Fontaine did. Granted, in a very different way than Justin Fontaine did, but I think he's flexible. Or if you put him on the third line, it's not ridiculous. Like if, say, you put Chris Porter on the third line, and you can put him on the fourth line and be like, wow, that adds a fair amount of size and hashtag grits to the fourth line.
God, I love some good grits. I think more importantly, we're all excited to see the hashtag Stewie Sprint return before games.
That was a nice bit.
The only thing looking forward to before the game was my pick for Minnesota Wild first.
Yes.
Which did not get old.
No.
I missed that.
Yes.
That was kind of it. I think at some point during the week, I forget when, the Wild signed Jason Zucker to a bridge deal, and it was pretty much around the area. We figured it to be kind of in the $1.5 million to $2 million, I think, is what we said on an earlier podcast.
Yeah.
He did end up getting
$2 million.
$2 million for the next 2 seasons, so not a bad deal.
Yeah, and I like it. We talked about him being a trade candidate, but this is, a 2-year bridge deal is exactly what we say it is. It's a bridge deal, and he's going to be an RFA at the end of it too, so that helps. But it's show me. It's, if you're a 30-goal scorer, that's a hell of a bargain at $2 million. But if you're going to be invisible like you were last season, $2 million doesn't really kill your team. So,
right.
I like it. I like the deal.
And bring on all the Las Vegas takers. No, I threw this out before free agency started on Friday late morning, but not bringing in a Caposo, who the Wild were believed to be in on.
Right, they allegedly very strongly on.
They just got way outbid, and thank God. But you butt out Vanek, you free up a spot in the top 6, you get some cap flexibility. This is kind of the time to give these, formerly called kids,
right,
their shot. Nobody outside of Granlund really's been in the top 6 a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
Coyle kind of became a mainstay in the top 6 last year, but this is a great chance for Zucker Niederreiter to kind of stake their claim to a top 6 spot, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
See if they're worth hanging on to, because a bunch of these kids now are going to be RFAs in the next year. So it's time to give them their fair shake, because they've been frequently buried on the depth chart behind veterans. So thankfully they didn't sign Caposo. That's
or
all
Backus.
to say.
Yep.
I kind of lost it when we first saw Backus reportedly just take a 1-year deal.
No. Yeah, me too.
If he was just taking a 1-year deal, then I'd be kind of mad that wasn't the Wild.
Right.
That
Same
1-year
here.
Deal, but
5 years, $6 million a year. That's totally fine. Boston can sign him to be their third line center for that.
Also, Bob McKenzie was just off on Friday. He had the wrong term on the Backus deal.
Yeah.
And he couldn't get the Stewart salary figure correct.
Right.
Which is why there was like a half hour where we had no clue what was going on.
Right.
Bad day for Bob to be off.
Yeah. Well, it's rare for him, but there's so much information flying around, and he's getting them from sources, not he's not in the room, with those contracts being signed and whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm willing to give him kind of a pass. I think he's still very good at what he does. So, but yeah, it was weird. It was, I mean, especially that Backus deal. It's like takes a 1-year deal. I'm like, what? And then they're like, oh, never mind, it's a 5-year deal. I'm like, that's kind of different.
And then I read that he is getting paid $6 million a year for 5 years to be a third-line center.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
Aren't you dumb, Boston?
And, yeah, well, and people thought that Wild fans hated Mako. They're not going to be thrilled with Backus in Boston if he's a third-line center making $6 million. Because he produces the same as Miko, if not less.
He'll have a good year this year, and I just don't...
What did you think? I know it's very brief, but about Stalock, do you like that?
Oh, I forgot about him. Yeah, that's a good depth move. For those who don't know what we're talking about, the Wild signed Alex Stalock to a 1-year, 2-way contract, I believe.
Yes.
It's a good move for Iowa. Him and Steve Mikulik, whatever it is.
Mikulik.
I forget what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Share time and goal, and Stalock can be that goalie of the Wild call up if there's an injury to Dubnyk or Kemper, who looks like he'll be sticking around next year at least, because there was just no way to trade him for anything of value.
Right.
So I like it. He was kind of somebody to look at as just a potential backup candidate if they traded Kemper, but it's good to just have him in the system as for depth. So
yeah, I don't think he was getting a backup job anywhere, which is why I think he so eagerly took the deal to stay close to home here. Which I think being a starter in the AHL and being the third, emergency John Curry goalie, I think is a great role. I think that's what you want to have Alex Stalock kind of around for. His numbers last year were pretty bad. So maybe he can figure something out. Maybe he can have a good year in the AHL, and that makes Kemper expendable. But let's have him prove it before we just anoint him the primary backup to Backstrom and give him 15 games a year, which might be generous with Dubnyk, but
right. I think that's all the moves.
Yeah, that's all they've done so far, and
right.
We're still kind of waiting on them. I mean, everything that Russo says, and some other people are saying is that they're. I feel like they're going to make another signing, like a fourth line type. Obviously, a fourth line signing. Ryan Carter is still a free agent. Former Wild center and Pittsburgh Penguins Stanley Cup champion Matt Cullen is still out there and could be signed by the Wild possibly if he doesn't return to Pittsburgh. So there's still a lot of options out there, and I mean, really, they don't need to rush with that kind of stuff. I don't know if they're waiting on Cullen or what the deal is exactly, but I'm sure they can. You can find those fourth line guys anywhere. That's the nice thing about it. I'm not fretting over them not having a fourth line guy signed because they picked up Carter and Porter both in the last 2 seasons before the season started, so it wasn't like it was any kind of emergency to grab those guys.
What excites me about just signing anyone, if it's Cullen or Carter or whatever, is regardless, is this team has like really good depth, and that's kind of what I took away from their signings on Friday was. They might not be splashy signings. They probably really don't jump off the page at anyone, but, there's a lot of depth to the 4 lines now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's key. Like, it kind of gives me some optimism when thinking about next season, is just having 4 lines that can just go out and score. And, last year kind of got tiring seeing Chris Porter out there just doing nothing.
Yeah. Well, and then this year...
I savage him all the time.
Which is fine. He was only here because he's Parisi's buddy. But and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, it sounds like they really want to give guys like Tyler Gravevac, Zach Delpy, Christian Birchie, Curtis Gabriel. It sounds like they want to give those kind of guys a pretty open shot at making this team, and obviously that's going to be on the fourth line. So I like that. I don't mind that they're not signing anyone because it really kind of opens it up for those kids to get some NHL playing time, which is going to be good.
Right.
And I know that they probably prefer Gravevac at least to be like a third line center. But I don't think it's going to hurt him at all to play on the fourth line. I mean, yeah, the fourth line is a, it's like a checking line or a defensive line or whatever, but it's not like you play the game differently when you're on the fourth line as opposed to on the third line. You're still trying to do the same things. Maybe a little bit more focus on your defense, but you're still trying to limit their chances. You're still trying to get chances yourself. So I don't think it's going to hurt him to be the fourth line center, and I think that's kind of what the plan is, to be honest, is that Gravac's going to hopefully win that fourth line center job in training camp, and then they surround him with Chris Stewart and Delpy, Birchie, Jordan Schrader is an RFA, maybe he can jump in there too, and so I like it. I like having a lot of flexibility with that third or that fourth line, and even with the third line a little bit. I mean, obviously, like we said, Stewart can kind of jump up. Schrader can jump up into a top 9 line or a top 9 spot and contribute. So I do like. I'm with you. I like their depth, and if they make a signing or two, that only improves it. So
I think I heard Gravevac has to clear waivers.
Yeah.
If the Wild try to send him down, so
yeah,
he's probably more of a lock now.
Right, and Michael Russo basically said that
team.
on his he was running the 9 to noon on KFan last week, and he basically said Gravevac basically has to make this team. So I think that's why I said I think that's what their plan is. I think that they totally anticipate having him win, quote unquote, the fourth line center job because they can't really send him down. And having him be their fourth line center as much as they possibly can, and that's probably a good thing. I mean, he's a big kid, but he's young, and he can still learn a lot by getting some NHL minutes, and the fourth line is a good way to ease him into it.
Yeah, you could do a lot worse than having Gravevac as your fourth line center.
Yeah,
it was
like signing Steve Ott
to see his season last year just get derailed.
By
injury
that
and
sports hernia is a real pain.
Yeah. I think it was Graf who tweeted the Wild now are going to open the season with 3 centers who are at least 6'3".
Yeah.
Referencing Staal, Koivu, and Gravevac.
Yeah.
And then there's Holla, who's like 6 foot.
Right.
Even, I believe. Poor Holla.
He don't care. He's got the speed.
Yeah, he makes it.
He can outskate all 3 of those guys, so it doesn't matter.
I also still have his jersey just hanging out.
Nice.
In plain sight. I haven't put it away with the rest of them yet.
Well, why would you? You need to.
I don't think I will.
Yeah. Exactly.
I want to wear it, but I haven't had the chance to. It's also hot.
True. Very true.
Yeah, and so I guess on the bigger note of things, we can kind of just rant about NHL moves in the last week in general. As referenced on Wednesday, there was literally an hour where Twitter was berserk.
Oh my god.
Which started with the Edmonton Oilers trading Taylor Hall for Adam Larson.
Yes.
Straight up.
Yeah.
What a... Oof. That's not a good trade.
No.
But I guess if you're that desperate to shake up your locker room, then...
Well, that's one thing, but straight up, like, you didn't even get a freaking pick.
Yeah.
If they would have landed a second-round pick in that deal, I'm not saying it would have made the deal. Everyone would have been like, "Oh, okay, fair square," But still, people would have been like, "Well, at least you got a decent pick or something like that," But just the fact that it was completely 1-for-1 made it so hilarious. And that was, you were right. Twitter was an absolute blast that afternoon.
We
the
didn't
jokes.
even have time to get to the crying Jordans that trade, and then we got derailed with another giant trade. Think about it. There was no time for crying Jordans to come out on the Taylor Hall trade,
which is amazing.
That's how quick this was.
Yeah,
going,
that's truly incredible. Amazing.
There were definitely crying Jordans for the next trade.
Yes,
but no crying Jordans for the Taylor Hall trade.
Didn't even have time to mourn.
Yeah, we literally had 10 minutes to make jokes about the Oilers, and then we just get blindsided with PK Subban being traded to Nashville for Shea Weber, straight up.
Mm-hmm.
And as I so aptly tweeted, Montreal now trying to replace Edmonton as the official tire fire of the NHL.
I think it was kind of fitting where James Myrtle, and this ties into Stamkos as well, where he kind of tweeted, he goes, "Canada's getting what it deserves today." And
Yep.
it's just like, yeah, all three of their three biggest, teams, their three most followed loyally teams, all kind of screwed the pooch in one way or another. Oilers gave away Hall, Montreal swapped Subban for Weber, which, a lot of people, there are some people on the other side of that trade, but it's like, okay, well, we'll just see about that. I'll take my side, and I'm feeling pretty comfortable with that bet. And then Toronto not landing Stamkos. And what a brutal day in Canada, just before Canada Day too.
First, what makes the Hall trade even more laughable is they replaced him with Milan Lucic.
I know.
Who signed that ridiculous 7-year deal.
Oh my god!
Which is just loaded with signing bonuses.
Yeah.
Which I'm adding to the list of topics for our What's Wrong with the NHL show. But
yeah.
I have no words for Edmonton. They're just a continuous tire fire.
Agreed.
Just wow. Yeah. Yeah, and then you mentioned Stamkos re-signing with Tampa Bay and at $8.5 million cap hit per year.
Yeah.
Steve Yzerman, just legend.
Yeah.
GM, he got Stamkos to sign the deal he wanted. He locked up Victor Hedman on Friday. A reasonable deal, and you got to give it to Steve Yzerman. He's building one hell of a team in Tampa Bay, and the Lightning are going to be good for quite a while.
He extended Vasilevsky as well.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's going to be a good deal when
it's like
traded.
I'm not positive, but let me double check. I believe it was like $3.5 million or something like that.
Yeah,
which for as good
ridiculous.
as $3.5 million for 3 years.
No matter what, after next season, Vasilevsky's the starting goaltender in Tampa Bay.
Yep. Yeah, because Bishop's on the last year of his deal, and if you've got Vasilevsky at $3.5 million, I don't know why you'd re-sign Ben Bishop. I'm surprised they didn't trade him, especially with the expansion draft coming. But whatever. Obviously they couldn't get a deal done. They probably tried, but they couldn't get a deal done. So
Friday was like the first day they could talk to Hedman about an extension, and they just got a deal done instantly.
Yeah,
which good for them. And eventually, though, somebody good is gonna get moved by Tampa Bay, like whether it's Killorn or Kucherov. Besides Bishop, like somebody's gonna get traded, and I was really impressed with Kucherov in the postseason.
Oh, yeah.
So I would mind trading for him.
I don't know that that's happening, but
Yeah, probably not.
we can dream.
Anyway, yeah, let me dream. I don't know. Do you have any other free agency thoughts?
I thought what Vanek got was interesting. It made sense. Yeah, 2.6 for 1 year with the Red Wings. It made sense. I mean, it was it's a show me deal for him as well. He's playing out what would have been the end of his contract with Minnesota, and he's recouping the money that he would have made here too, the 1/3 of his contract. So. It's interesting, and I'll be very interested to see how Vanek does this year. I think the Red Wings aren't really a team that's super exciting, but at the same time, I think that they're good enough to where he could produce.
Right. As our friend of the show, Randball Stew, offered up his analysis to me of the Vanek signing on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Louis Arena is just a cool 15 minutes away from the closest casino. So, just to throw it out there.
Is he the first captain of the Las Vegas hockey team?
Oh God,
He'll be a free agent. They can sign him.
It'll be interesting to see how he does. I would say, if he can stay healthy, he'll probably produce a little better out in the East, where it's kind of a forwards type of conference.
Yeah.
And my other kind of takeaway from free agency or last week was Florida just tossing money around like no one's business, locking up all their young stars and adding Demers and Yandel last week, and they're gonna be a good team, man. They only had somewhat good jerseys.
Yeah, I think Florida HC is going to be very interesting going into next season.
Yep.
They're the thing that was weird for me was the Reimer signing.
I like that.
Really?
I did.
I mean, they've got Luongo for the
Right,
next
but
gazillion years.
He's also freaking 50 years old, man.
Well, true.
And eventually, he's just going to start falling apart. So I think it was good to get Reimer in there, and they can be a good tandem.
Yeah, maybe they're hoping for, basically a better version of what the Stars had.
Right.
Because I'll take Luongo and Reimer over Lettinen and Yami any day.
Right,
and they're paying them less, actually.
Try to have them split their time and,
right.
Put a little less pressure on Luongo and give his body a little break.
Right. So,
on Bruce Boudreau for Devin Dubnyk.
Yeah. On Friday, did you see Luongo, who's a phenomenal follow on Twitter? Did you see him tweet at CapFriendly? And he said, can you guys put the trash emoji next to these new contracts being signed today? And they responded by putting the trash emoji next to his contract. And he screenshotted it and tweeted the applause emoji, which I thought was just hilarious.
He's a good.
And then he tweets out, watching the TSN coverage or NHL Network or whatever. He goes, "Why does every highlight of a player scoring have to be on me?" It's like, well.
He's fun.
Oh, he's fantastic.
He's a fun follow.
Yep.
If only we didn't lose those years of liking him when he was in Vancouver.
Yeah, true.
Well, I don't know. Any other thoughts on junk?
Free agency on the whole?
I
I think it was interesting. I think it was rather comical how quickly it was all over. It was all basically over in about an hour or two.
Yeah, about that non-negotiation.
Non-negotiating period, yeah.
What a crock.
I know, it just makes it kind of funny. Like, it's like, okay, yeah, they're not going to negotiate. They can talk to players for a week, but they can't throw around a single number. Give me a break. Come on.
Yeah, okay.
Right. But, I thought that it was interesting. I mean, whereas, you see other free agencies, especially like baseball, good Lord, they drag that out all winter long. But hockey, I mean, it's literally done it. I mean, and by what was it, like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, all of the big hockey writers were like, well, I'm going golfing. It's Canada Day. I'm going to go, retire to the cottage for the weekend. Have a nice holiday.
2 months.
Yeah, well, yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, for this, yeah, but yeah. I'm going to go retire to my cottage until, I don't know, mid-August, if not later. So I thought that was rather funny, because it's like, well, I'm sure somebody's going to be around to report, where Jarrett Stoll finally signs, but I just don't know that anybody's going to care.
I don't really care at all where he signs.
No, I don't either. As long as it's not in Vegas.
Don't sign here.
I don't think he's coming back.
No. Yeah, and then I hated all those. A lot of the big deals were just kind of loaded with signing bonuses, and essentially that's just guaranteed money. And as it was alluded to in the last couple of days, that's just going to be the cause of the next NHL lockout.
Yep.
In 4 years? Which is totes exciting. I want another work stoppage because God, that's what this league needs.
Well, and not to say that these players don't deserve the money, because I'm sure everyone will immediately be like, well, owners are making a lot of money, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But when you're paying third-line centers like Backus $6 million a year, and that's the going rate for him in the market, I mean, that's what, it takes to sign him. I mean, that's that's going to cause some problems. I mean, Shaw got $6 million a year. What the hell? I mean, it just... that guy is such a turd. And
well, at least he's playing for a turd team.
Or not $6 million, he got...
6 years at...
Yeah, 6... Yeah, okay, so 6 years at almost $4 million, which isn't nearly as bad. But still, it's just like, what? I don't know, because he's young, I guess, maybe that makes it kind of okay, but... there's so many... And then the Alexander Radulov, which isn't... the worst thing. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's just like, okay, I guess give the guy another shot, blah blah blah, that sort of thing. Even though you just traded PK Subban because you didn't like his personality, you're gonna sign Alexander Radulov and pretend like that's totally reasonable.
Oh yeah, he's just a team leader. Anyway. I'll say this. I forgot to throw this out there on the Subban talk, but man, to just trade away like your franchise defenseman and somebody who's just so well liked, just as a player and in the community, I just don't know like how you can do that, and I kind of have a little bit of sympathy for Habs fans because that was awful. I don't know. The Wild have never had a player anywhere close to the caliber of Subban, so I really can't relate.
You know who the real loser is fans of Subban outside of, well, I mean, not just within Montreal, but just the jersey trade-off.
Oh.
I mean,
Well, that reminds me. I have to check to see if Subban Habs jerseys are on sale yet.
Well, and that's an awesome jersey, because, I mean, the Habs jerseys are obviously great. And then you've got Subban, who's a young, talented, exciting player. From all indications, despite what the Canadians say, a real stand-up guy, donated $10 million to a hospital in Montreal.
Right.
And so that's a really cool jersey to own, I mean, for aficionados such as ourselves. And then he goes to Nashville, where, we haven't really made this list, but, probably the ugliest jersey in the NHL, right? It got to be close. Is there an uglier jersey in the NHL than Nashville?
Yes.
Who's that?
Colorado.
I mean, maybe. And then the yellow helmets. Oh, he's gonna have to wear a yellow helmet.
Somebody did tweet at Nashville, I believe. It was just like, you know what? You get better jerseys and take my money.
Yeah.
For a Subban jersey.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know. Maybe, hopefully, with Adidas, they go back to their navy blue being their main color, and we can kind of work with that from there. Because I think their logo is fine. I mean, it's kind of late 90s-ish, but I think it's fine.
You can get Subban Habs jerseys for $100.
I gotta think that. Well, I gotta think that's still gonna come down. Don't you think?
I don't know.
Don't you think?
That seems to be their going rate, and they're going white or red.
So anyway, to wrap up free agency, the Wild now have 6.9.
Nice.
Nice.
I tweeted that on Friday. I didn't even think of that. But, as soon as you do, you get like 5 people in your mentions going nice. And you're like, oh.
Oh, right. But the part that bothers me is, okay, so $6.9 million. Why did they need to save $5 million by buying out Thomas Vanek again? I mean, was it exclusively? I mean, it couldn't have been because they thought they were making a trade. Because every trade that we saw, I mean, I guess unless Dumbo was involved, but either way, neither here nor there. If they would have held on to Vanek, they still could have bought him out later. There's another window, and you can exceed the salary cap in the offseason. You can exceed it by 10%.
Right.
So you can sign players, and you can do the math. It's not freaking difficult. It just goes back to they didn't need to buy him out.
Right.
Again, which we've been saying forever. And then, and they're going to start this season. I mean, I really doubt they're going to sign anybody for more than, I don't know. They're going to sign, I suppose they'll sign Dumba for about $2 million, and Kemper for about $1 million and change. And then it's just like, okay, so they're going to be under the cap by $3 or $4 million.
Right.
And they needed to save that 5. That I don't know. It just not that I hate them signing Chris Stewart, but it's like I'd rather have Vanek than Chris Stewart.
Right.
No offense to Chris Stewart, but I'd rather have Vanek. I don't know. Whatever. I mean, it is what it is now, and I guess we'll know better once they sign Dumba and Kemper and Schrader, because those are the only guys left, and then another UFA. But it just seems to me like they didn't need nearly as much space as they thought they did. And even if they didn't, they could have bought him out after the fact, and instead, here we are. So, I don't know. That's just kind of a parting thought that I have.
The buyout on Vanek, we've hit on this so much. But
Right.
I'm not that upset with it now, but next year that $2.5 million cap hit, that still kind of bothers me. But we'll see if they can make it work this year and they can avoid a January swoon and they can be a consistently good team. Great, because I was telling Dan yesterday, I think the Central Division's kind of wide open.
Yeah.
I think Nashville's probably now kind of up there with the elites, in the league, and they could be a team that could, maybe win the division if Pecorine can play to what he used to play, not what we saw last year.
Right.
I don't know. Chicago just kind of losing, their depth guys.
Yep.
So they can continue to pay their star players.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be in there. Dallas, I think Dallas defense kind of got worse.
They lost Demers, they lost Chris Russell.
Right.
That's nothing to sneeze at. There's gonna be consequences to that.
They're still putting Lettinen and Niemi in there.
I know, that's the most important part.
I mean, they signed Dan Hamhuis.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that, gonna, make a difference? I don't know. And then who else? The Blues. I think the Blues kind of took a little bit of a step back. They traded Brian Elliott and Jake Allen, taking the number 1 job, kind of up in the air.
They lost Backus. They lost Troy Brouwer.
Yeah. And then you have the Jets. They're kind of young, upcoming. They got kids on the way. And then you have the Avs. Still a tire fire. Which warms my heart. But, yeah, the moral is this. The Central is really wide open next year. So, you never know what could happen. And if the Wild can, avoid that mid-season swoon, then I think they can be right there in the thick of it at the end. Yeah.
And that's what I think what Boudreau brings into this team is that, I don't think this team is swoon proof, but it definitely was like a thing with Mike Yeo. And so I think, a lot of people ask me what this team could do to be better next season. And I was like, well, coaching is going to help a lot. Coaching is going to be the biggest difference. I mean, changing the culture in that locker room is not going to be easy, but if anybody can do it, it's Bruce Boudreau. And so it'll be interesting to see how this team responds. Because we talked about them being, that was something that you and I both beat to death, was this team being mentally weak and mentally fragile. And those aren't something that you associate with Bruce Boudreau. So it'll be interesting to see if that's the case.
Yeah, and as we all know, all Bruce Boudreau does is win division titles. So, I'm not opposed to hanging a few more banners in the rafters at Xcel Energy Center.
Right.
They're pretty empty.
Yeah, they are.
You just have that one sad little banner.
Yep.
Anyway, on to the jerseys. Our last official jersey segment.
Oh, I suppose I should hit the drop, huh?
I was waiting.
Oh, okay.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Well, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
Okay.
Oh, I couldn't tell if we were done. But anyway, last couple teams kind of go through here. They both kind of have a weird tie-in with the North Stars in some way. The first of which being the California Golden Seals. If there's a team that just cries out 70s, this is it.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness. Oof. This is quite something. Whether it's the green and gold or their teal, they were they tried teal a couple decades too soon.
Yeah.
But that's quite an ugly history of uniforms.
You know what's interesting to me is that looking at these jerseys, their initial jersey set literally lasted 3 months.
Huh.
They went from the California Seals, and they were rechristened on December 8th, 1967. So 3 months. No, 2 months. 2 months into their existence, they changed the location. And even the Arizona Coyotes say that's weird. They went from California to Oakland, and they changed their logo because it went from a C behind the seal to an O behind the seal. 2 months! That's jaw-droppingly weird. And which wouldn't be the first weird thing to happen to this team, obviously.
That's quite the change.
Yeah.
But they their first jerseys kind of had a Hartford Whalers feel to them.
Yeah, they did. They had the green and blue going.
Then they went with the
green
and gold.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad look. And then, not to say the green and gold was a bad look. I don't. They were very 70s. All of their jerseys were very 70s-ish. And then obviously Chuck Finley buying the team and trying to turn them into the Athletics on ice was kind of weird. But it was just I don't know. It's just one of those franchises where you just look at it and you're like, man, this is weird.
Yeah, it says in here they kind of tied in the green and gold with the Oakland A's because the owner was also the owner of the Oakland A's, so he just thought it'd be good to have the same color scheme for both teams. But
Also, a fun side note, if people didn't know, they were the first team to wear white skates. And they didn't do it with white leather, because that would be too easy. They used paint.
Nice. And
they actually painted the skates. And, of course, white skates, as you well know, as any white hockey equipment, is why we don't wear white hockey equipment, gets marked up pretty quickly. With puck marks and stick marks and all sorts of things. So they just kept painting the skates. And from a story that I read a long time ago, I don't remember it exactly, but I guess by the end of the season, each skate weighed easily double what it did at the beginning of the season because it was so covered in white paint.
That's bad.
It is.
It's like weighing your feet down.
Or
like watching Danny Heatley skate in his final year here. And then the Golden Seals moved to Cleveland.
Yeah.
It became the Cleveland Barons.
Yeah.
Who pretty much just mailed in their color scheme and just said, well, we could just roll with an Ohio State look.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what they did for their 2 seasons in Cleveland before the North Stars ate up that franchise.
Yep.
At least that's what I think happened. They merged with the North Stars.
They basically did.
Hockey was weird in the 70s.
Yeah. They basically dissolved that team, but just into the North Stars. Like, I don't know exactly how that worked, but there wasn't like a dispersal draft. It was just, we're going to cram these two teams together because the North Stars weren't the greatest at the time, and obviously neither was that horrific Barons franchise. So, it was a little weird, but I guess that's it probably made sense at the time. I don't know.
So, in 78, the Barons merged with the North Stars.
Yep.
Excuse me, the Cleveland Barons merged with the North Stars.
Yeah.
That kind of started maybe we inherited the Cleveland curse. Maybe that's where this string of great luck sans 2 twin seasons came from.
Yeah.
We merged with Cleveland. Blame the North Stars for the curse of our major sports teams being trash.
The North Stars, did they leave it here with... I mean, they didn't...
Yeah,
obviously
apparently they left it here. That was the one thing Norm Green didn't pack and take with him. Ass.
Well, but also since then, since the North Stars... Oh, no. Yeah, the Stars, because Dallas still won a couple of Super Bowls since then, I guess. So that doesn't really count. Yeah, Dallas definitely did not inherit our curse, so... No.
Anyway, that's really all we can say about the Barons jerseys. Is they're just pretty much like Ohio State colors, and just
very bland, and it looked like a city planner designed them. It just was nothing exciting whatsoever. The logo is just weird.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it for the jersey segment for this season.
Right. We'll have to figure out something else. Yeah, next year I don't know what we're going to do.
And Jersey talk isn't going away on this podcast.
I think I have some ideas. We'll discuss behind the curtain.
We got all summer to discuss.
Right.
Come up with some new things.
Open to suggestions as well.
We should come up with a survey. We should send out that survey.
Yeah, maybe.
Question 1. Do you prefer episodes where Giles doesn't drink or does drink?
I think you know the answer to that question, Giles.
Yeah. I feel bad about that, but bumps the ratings, then
Oh.
I guess I have to do what's best for the ratings.
Okay, that's all right. All right, yeah, that's why you drink. Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, I suppose. Do you have any? You can wrap it up.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't know what we're gonna do next week. If there's news, we can probably cram in another show, and
Sure.
if not, really, then we can probably just roll on with our "What's Wrong with the NHL" podcast. And then
Sure.
call it a year.
Yeah, maybe that's what we do. We'll see. Yeah, I think.
Final thoughts.
Yeah, I don't have much. I just spent like 24 plus hours straight in Uptown, so I'm kind of trying to slowly recover here. But yeah, I think it was a lot of fun. I'm overall I'm very happy with how the draft and the trade deadline, or not trade line, the free agency period went for the Wild, which is a little surprising. You kind of. We've been trained, we've been whipped into submission by Minnesota sports, and they're just kind of expecting the worst to happen. But I liked what the Wild did with the draft. I liked the Cunnin pick, and I really liked the Sokolov pick. And then, yeah, I like the Staal contract. There's not much to hate about the Stewart contract, and I think Stalock is being put in a good position and will help this franchise in one way or another. So yeah, I mean, solid 2 weeks here for the hometown club, which is not something we've been able to say very often in the past season, or at least the last season.
Yesterday, Dan and I kind of agreed when we were talking about free agency. Like they didn't make big splashy moves, but they did enough to just kind of make you feel a little better about what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree.
And at the very least, the Staal deal just kind of puts him as a placeholder until Eriksson Ek and Kunin are ready to go.
Yeah.
'Cause they're figuratively going to be the centers of the future on this team, and
Right.
because we only got 2 years left of Koivu and 3 with Staal, and after that, who knows? Who knows what it'll look like in a couple of years down the middle.
Right.
Hopefully 56 is still here.
That's one thing that if I were to say they can do this summer, we talked about this before, but I want to see them extend some guys. I understand them not extending Granlund, and I kind of understand them not extending Holla because you don't have great track record to work on there.
Right, you got to get a full season out of him.
Right,
really
out
see
of
what you got.
Mike Yo's doghouse at least. But Nino, I really want to see an extension for Nino. But like we said, Chuck seems to like to do it in the fall. We've seen a lot of guys extended early in the season for whatever reason. I guess he just really likes taking July and August off. So yeah, I mean, hopefully we see that early this fall. We see a Nino extension, and that will, as we talked about, making "Let's Go Crazy" the goal song will kind of complete the summer for the team.
Yes, that's that is key. Is the goal song. That needs to happen. I guess I don't really have any final thoughts. I guess just looking ahead to this week, just hopefully they can maybe get their RFAs signed and figure out what the deal with Cullen is, or if not, just they'll probably just circle around on Ryan Carter, as Dave alluded to, and
Which is fine.
which isn't bad. And then Iowa should be better next year with all the kids in there now and whatnot. So I don't know. Call me crazy. Call me, promoting team propaganda or whatever the hell it is. But the future wasn't as bleak as it was a couple of weeks ago.
Sure.
So that's kind of what I took out the last week. So that can be my final thought.
Sure.
So yeah, that'll wrap it up. You can find us on Twitter's arguing about,
various food
pretty
stuff.
much anything.
Yeah.
At Giles Farrell, at Ben Remington. Find us writing at wildextra.com. And if you listen to the podcast on iTunes, don't forget to rate us on iTunes.
Yes.
Even though I think studies have shown nobody listens this far, so this is just pointless.
True.
Pointless promotions. So, but yeah, like we said, we'll be back next week, and then who knows what's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no other episode, that'll be it. So we'll see what comes in the next week.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Later.
St. Paul, Minnesota. Minneapolis, Minnesota.
We are ducks, and ducks fly together.